There is a relic in Silo 18 that may be far more dangerous than the hard drive, more revealing than Quinn's letter, and potentially more important than almost anything Bernard has ever found. A spiral-bound notebook. Bernard mentioned it in Season 3, Episode 7. He told Juliet that the heads of IT had spent roughly 3 centuries trying to find it, and they never did. That detail is easy to overlook because the episode gives us another relic at the same time. The mission diary. But the notebook has a very strange connection to the other half of the story, because we have already seen someone writing in a spiral-bound notebook centuries before Juliet was born, Helen Drew. And if those two notebooks are the same object, the implications are huge. Helen is currently living through the period when the Silo project is being created. She is investigating the people behind it. She is documenting what she sees. She knows enough to realize that the official explanation being given to her doesn't answer all of her questions. And now, the show has introduced a relic that the leaders of IT have apparently been desperate to recover for generations. That is a very specific coincidence. The strongest part of this theory is that the notebook itself has already been shown to matter. When Helen was investigating Charlotte's memories, we saw her writing things down in that notebook. Charlotte's reaction also established that written material from this period can have an unusual connection to memories that the Silo's residents have been taught to forget. That gives the notebook a second possible purpose. It could preserve information that the Silo system was designed to erase. And that may be exactly why IT wanted it. Think about what Helen is doing at the moment. She is a journalist. Her instinct is to record what people tell her, compare those accounts, follow inconsistencies, and keep evidence. Daniel is an engineer with his own knowledge of the project, but Helen has something different. She is documenting the human side of the conspiracy. She is asking questions. Who built the silos? Why were they built? What happened to the outside world? Who actually controls the project? What are the people behind it willing to do to keep it secret? Those are precisely the kinds of questions that would become dangerous once the population was sealed underground. And Season 3 has now shown us something even more important. Helen has seen the silos. That means her notebook could contain observations from before the official history of the silo was established. That distinction matters. Inside Silo 18, almost every piece of historical information has passed through somebody else's hands. The pack defines what people are supposed to know. It controls information. Relics survive in fragments. Memories are deliberately altered. A first-hand account from the beginning would be different. Helen could have written down what she saw before anyone had a reason to rewrite it. And if she eventually entered one of those silos, her notebook could have entered with her. We already have proof that one object belonging to Helen made exactly that kind of journey. The Pez dispenser Daniel gave her in the Season 2 finale eventually became a relic inside the silo. Hundreds of years later, the show deliberately used that object to connect Helen's timeline to Juliet's. That was never just a random piece of nostalgia. The creators have already established the visual language. An object from Helen's world can survive into Juliet's world. So when Bernard tells Juliet about a spiral-bound notebook that IT has searched for over hundreds of years, and we know Helen has been keeping a spiral-bound notebook while investigating the Silo project, the connection deserves attention. The show may be setting up another object crossing the same distance. Only this time, the object could contain information, and that creates a much bigger question. Why would IT spend generations looking for it? If the notebook contained ordinary notes from a journalist, it would be strange for every head of IT to care about it for centuries. But imagine what could be inside. Helen could have recorded conversations with the people behind the project. She could have documented the construction of the silos. She could have written down what she learned about the purpose of the experiment. She could have recorded the people involved before their identities disappeared from the official history. She might even have written about the decisions that led to the population being sealed underground. That would make the notebook incredibly dangerous. The residents of Silo 18 have spent generations trying to reconstruct their own history from scraps. Helen may have written that history down while it was actually happening. There is another reason I think this theory fits the show's storytelling. Silo has repeatedly made physical objects more important than they first appear. The relics aren't simply old junk. They are pieces of a history that the silo system has tried to control. Juliet's investigation began partly through relics. The Flamekeepers preserve forbidden memories through objects. The hard drive contains information that should have been impossible for most residents to access. Quinn's letter preserved a secret that survived long after the people who understood it were gone. And now Bernard tells Juliet about another object that it desperately wanted. The pattern is getting hard to ignore. The notebook could be the most complete historical record any resident has ever found. But there is one major problem. If the notebook is Helen's, where has it been for 300 years? That may actually be the easiest part of the theory to explain. The notebook doesn't have to remain in someone's possession for generations. It only has to survive. And Silo has already shown us that relics can disappear for extraordinary lengths of time. The hard drive was hidden. Quinn's letter was hidden. Important information has survived inside walls, under floors, inside restricted areas, and in places the people controlling the silo didn't think to search. So the notebook could have been deliberately concealed by Helen or someone who came after her. That would also explain why IT knew it existed. If the notebook was considered dangerous from the beginning, the people who created the silo system may have known that Helen had it. They may have searched for it immediately. Then later, heads of IT inherited the same problem. A document existed somewhere in the silo, but nobody knew exactly where. 300 years later, Bernard is still looking. That would make the notebook a fascinating piece of the conflict between IT and the Flamekeepers. The Flamekeepers are built around preserving knowledge. IT is built around controlling knowledge. A document written by Helen could sit directly between those two forces. Whoever possesses it has access to an account of the past that the silo's authorities cannot easily dismiss. And there is an even more interesting possibility. What if the notebook is the reason certain people in Silo 18 knew more than they were supposed to? We have already seen evidence that forbidden knowledge can survive through ordinary people. The Flamekeepers passed information down. Families preserved relics. Stories survived. People remembered fragments of the world that existed before the silos. If Helen's notebook became part of that chain, it could have been copied, hidden, moved, or divided over generations. The original could have disappeared while its information survived in fragments. That would fit the show's larger treatment of history. The truth rarely arrives in one clean revelation. It survives as pieces. A letter here, a hard drive there, a relic that shouldn't exist, a memory that someone wasn't supposed to have, a story passed between people who don't fully understand what it means, and now possibly a notebook written by someone who was there when the entire system began. There is also a beautiful narrative connection waiting at the end of this. Juliet could discover something written by Helen herself. Think about what that scene would mean. Juliet has spent her entire life inside the consequences of a decision made centuries before she was born. She has fought it. She has questioned the pact. She has crossed into another silo. She has seen what happens when people challenge the system. And then she could find the personal notes of the woman who watched that system being created. Suddenly, the distant past would become personal. Helen wouldn't just be a character from the other timeline anymore. Her words could be sitting in Juliet's hands. That would also give the two timelines a direct narrative purpose. The before time story tells us what happened. The Juliet story shows us what those decisions caused. The notebook could be the physical bridge between them. And there is another detail I find particularly interesting. Helen has been told that she cannot write about what she learns for a period of years. For a journalist, that's an enormous restriction. She has been given information that she considers important, and she has been told to keep quiet. That creates an obvious reason for her to keep taking notes privately. She may be prevented from publishing. She isn't necessarily prevented from documenting. If she believed the people controlling the project were hiding something, I would expect Helen to keep records. That is exactly what a journalist in her position would do. And if the world collapsed before she ever got the chance to publish her work, those notes could become the only surviving record of what she discovered. This is where the theory becomes more than Helen owns a notebook. It becomes a possible explanation for why the notebook matters to the story at all. The Silo residents are living inside a controlled version of history. Helen was present before that history was controlled. Her notebook could contain the version of events that existed before the edits. There is still a major uncertainty, though. The show has not confirmed that Bernard's missing notebook belonged to Helen. It could belong to Daniel. It could belong to another person involved in the creation of the silos. It could even be connected to a completely different story that hasn't been revealed yet. So, I wouldn't call this solved. But the evidence is unusually clean for a silo theory. We have Helen documenting events in a spiral-bound notebook. We have Helen's personal belongings already appearing as relics inside the silo. We have Bernard revealing that IT has searched for a spiral-bound notebook for hundreds of years. And we have a story that is currently showing us the exact period when the silos were being created. That is enough to make the connection worth taking seriously. And if the notebook really is Helen's, I think the most interesting question won't be where she hid it. It will be what she wrote in it. Because Helen may have witnessed the birth of the silo system before anyone had the chance to rewrite its history. She may have documented the people responsible. She may have recorded what they told her. She may have written down the parts of the plan they never wanted ordinary residents to know. And somewhere in Silo 18, that record could still exist. Juliet has spent years finding pieces of the truth. A notebook written by Helen could finally give her something much more dangerous. The truth in chronological order, written by someone who was there. If the show is heading in that direction, the moment Juliet opens that notebook could be one of the biggest connections between the two timelines we've seen yet.